It's an ordinary night, like any other, as you sit on the couch watching the latest episode of your favorite show. Suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you see a dark, blacker than black, massive shadow moving across the side of the room. Before your mind can register what it is that you might be seeing, your head turns and your eyes look over to see who's there. However, as your eyes begin to focus, you see nothing there at all. My mind is just playing tricks on me, you think to yourself. Shrugging it off, you go back to watching your show before going to bed. Later that night, you lay in bed alone and drift off into dreamland. At around 3 a.m., you suddenly wake without explanation. You're overcome with fear and dread. It must have been a nightmare, you think to yourself. In the darkness of the room, there are few sources of light. The clock radio on your nightstand reads 3:02 a.m., providing a subtle, red glow to the rest of the room. As you glance around the room, you notice something odd about the doorway. A dark, misty silhouette of a man is standing there, completely still. You rub your eyes and squint closely, unsure if you are seeing what you think you're seeing. Fear and anxiety overwhelm you as what you had hoped was just an optical illusion begins to move. Your heart begins to beat faster. Fear turns into utter panic and terror as this shadowy silhouette begins to slowly walk into the room, stopping at the foot of your bed. You can feel it staring at you, as if directly into your soul and every fiber of your being. Your mind races. You desperately want to jump up out of bed and turn on the light, but this shadowy figure stands in your way. Your only sense of comfort comes from pulling your blanket up over your head and not daring to leave any body parts sticking out from under the safety of the covers. An unknown amount of time passes before you are jolted so hard that your heart feels like it's going to jump up out of your chest. Like a minaret calling the faithful to prayer, your alarm clock begins to chirp away to remind you that it's time to wake up and get ready for another day of wage slavery at the office. As you peek your head up out of the covers, the room is empty and the Shadow Man is no longer there as the morning sunlight streams in through your blinds. Friends, fellow seekers of the truth, tonight we're broadcasting to you live from perhaps the darkest, most shadowy place that this podcast has thus far ever broadcast from. My name is Nate, and with me is my fearless and slightly radioactive co-host Ivan, and together we're the Super Mystery Bros. Ivan, what can people do to assist us on our journey into the unknown?
Yeah, guys, just leave a rating and review in whatever app that you use to listen to the podcast. And yeah, we would be happy to read your comments and shit,
Yeah, that's all we need. We don't need your money, so please leave a rating and review. Let's begin, shall we? Shadow people. Just what are they? Ghosts? Interdimensional travelers? Residual energies from the past? Demons? Or merely a figment of our imagination? Commonly described as shadowy figures in humanoid form or black cloudy mists, they tend to appear in peripheral vision only, disappearing the instant that the observer tries to look directly at them. They sometimes are described as having red eyes or wearing a type of top hat. Many believe them to be sinister entities and are commonly seen in places and buildings considered to be haunted. They appear in historical folklore all across the world, such as the jinn in Islam, which are described as powerful, invisible beings capable of possessing people and even inflicting suffering upon them, to the Native American Choctaw. How do you pronounce that word, man?
Nalusachito?
Well, I hope you're saying that right. It roughly translates to big black thing, which is believed to eat souls. If the person allowed evil thoughts or depression into their minds, what Ivan just said would creep inside them and eat their minds. Many Choctaw will not say his name for fear of summoning it. Shadow people are among the most common reported type of paranormal sightings.
Man, what you just did? What did you make me do, man? Shit, they gotta hunt me now.
Well, you think I wanted to say that word?
You tricked me. You tricked me into this, man. Okay. Although commonly mistaken for ghosts, shadow people have a different physical description. While ghosts are described as more of a misty white, vaporous, but obviously very human-like appearance, shadow people are much darker, often black, with no discernible details such as clothing or facial features. In other words, they are usually described only by a dark shape with no other detail within it. Hence, the term shadow person or shadow figure. Despite not having any solid proof as to what they are, one thing is for certain. They have been spotted by people for millennia, possibly including, but not limited to, someone you know and hold in high regard.
Wow, man. It sounds like these things have been spotted basically as long as humans have been alive, huh?
Yeah, much more often than the Nightcrawler from the last episode, right?
Yeah. The mainstream opinion of most skeptics and scientists is that this phenomenon is nothing more than a figment of the human imagination. Shadows or headlights passing by creating the false illusion of a shadow moving across the room is one example, all the way down to mental disorders, sleep deprivation, and drug use can play tricks on the mind and make people believe that they saw something tangible when in fact they hallucinated it.
Upon researching this particular topic, we decided to check the world's most trusted source of the information, Wikipedia. So, following excerpt comes from Wikipedia. Several physiological and psychological conditions can account for reported experiences of shadowy shapes seeming to come alive. A sleep paralysis sufferer may perceive a shadowy or indistinct shape approaching him when they lie awake paralyzed and become increasingly alarmed. A person experiencing heightened emotion, such as while walking along on a dark night, may incorrectly perceive a patch of shadow as an attacker. Many methamphetamine addicts, also known as tweakers are back, report the appearance of the shadow people after prolonged periods of sleep deprivation. Psychiatrist Jack Potts suggests that methamphetamine usage adds a conspiratorial component to the sleep deprivation hallucinations. One interviewed subject said that you don't see shadow dogs or shadow birds or shadow cars. You see shadow people standing in the doorways, walking behind you, coming at you on the sidewalk. These hallucinations have been directly compared to the paranormal entities described in the folklore. Finally, visual hallucinations such as those caused by schizophrenia and bipolar disorder may appear by shadowy figures at the edge of peripheral vision.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack there, man. Can you sum that up for someone who doesn't have a PhD, such as yourself?
Man, I don't have a PhD yet, but
you're almost there.
Yeah, I haven't started yet. But anyway, so if you try to pack it in one sentence,
it makes it sound like they're trying to explain this phenomenon away as some sort of hallucination caused by either sleep deprivation or meth use, bipolar, schizophrenia disorder, that sort of thing.
Or the heightened emotion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The fear.
Exactly. In 2017, world-renowned psychologist and just absolute pillar of the medical community, Dr. Phil McGraw, had a young lady on his daytime talk show who has been plagued by encounters with shadow people for all of her life. Let's roll clip 1, which is from a portion of the Dr. Phil episode found on YouTube.
My entire life I've seen shadow people. They have a head and they have hands. They would tell me things like, don't go into that room, there's a bad person in there. It said my name, Haley, come here. When I start to see the black shadow people, I usually hide under my blanket for comfort. It's overwhelming.
Okay, now Haley, you were just talking about some of the things that you're still experiencing, and you want that to stop, correct? And if there's a way for that to stop, then you want it to stop. And when you are on the proper medication at the proper level for the proper duration, where the medication can reach what are called therapeutic levels in your blood, then that gets better, correct?
I've never had it gotten better. Like, they don't go away. The shadows and the voices just don't go away.
They get better?
No, I haven't gotten better. They just stay there. They don't go away.
Okay.
I'm tired of it. They don't go away. I've been through this since I was little bitty.
So you need to continue to work to try to get this under control, right?
Do something, yeah. I can't even sleep anymore.
Are you aware that these are voices instead of thoughts?
Yeah, yes.
You say you can actually hear them. Okay.
All right, man. So what did you think of that Dr. Phil clip? Because I could see that you were reacting pretty strongly to it.
I don't know. I just don't know where to start and how to unpack it.
As a professional psychologist such as yourself with a PhD.
Oh yeah.
With a PhD. So
In the
break it down for all of us who aren't as experienced as you.
I would say the first point, maybe the most important point in this story, that the lady actually believes that Eminem is her father, man.
Yeah, that's something that our viewers are not going to, or sorry, our listeners are not going to be able to see because if they're not watching the video clip, there is a caption underneath this girl as she's talking that it says that she believes Eminem is her father. So, what do you make of that?
I don't know if Eminem is her father. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's some part of her. Maybe the voices make her believe that.
You think the voices tell her that Eminem is her father?
Maybe yes. I mean, that was my impression in a way, you know. Then I looked at her and I thought, yeah, maybe the voices told her too, and she's kind of persuaded by the voices, but there is also what comes to my mind that it might be like her psychological defense in a way to believe that those spirits are not her, but they're like different personalities in her head and they're talking to her, but it's not her talking to her. You know what I mean? It's kind of
yeah. It's like what Dr. Phil said at the end, where he's like, "Are you aware that these are voices and not thoughts?"
Yeah, he asked her about it.
Yeah,
but she's saying no, I'm not aware. So she believes them to be the ghosts,
right?
Or the
to her they're distinct from just thoughts that she's having in her head. Like to her, these are audible voices that she's hearing.
So they have their own personality, and
right?
Yeah. So I think there's definitely some issue here, and also she also said about the sleep deprivation, right? If you go back to the Wikipedia article, I mean, she said it caused it, but with the things like that, you never know. It's mostly like positive feedback loop. You know, it just goes. If you're sleep deprived, you're more likely to see this shit and to not be able to control your emotional state. And then
completely agree.
Yeah, it's like a positive feedback loop. You just get into this freaking loop and you just sometimes cannot stop. Maybe that's what happened to her.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you just said there. The problem that I kind of had with Dr. Phil's approach here is that he had asked her, what was it? He had asked her, about the medication that she was taking, and does it get better when you take the proper medication at the proper dosage? It's like, no, it hasn't gotten better at all. It's never gotten better. I think it was her word.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I feel like he's just really trying to push more medication on her when even the amount of medication that she's taking isn't helping at all. So he's kind of approaching this. And the problem that I have with Dr. Phil here is he's kind of treating her like a really stupid child, and he's kind of talking down to her a little bit. And like, if you watch the video, it's clear from his face that he's like not taking her seriously at all, and he's just treating her as if she's psychotic or schizophrenic or something like that. So I want to read just a couple of the top comments on this video. So Wally B says, quote, "I love how these doctors just try to solve all problems with medication," end quote. Kelly Downey says, quote, "Why don't people take stuff like this seriously? I've seen and felt shadow people before. It's actually not a joke. It's genuinely terrifying," end quote. Luff Ace says, quote, "I feel sorry for her. No one's actually listening to her. Everyone is making fun of her," end quote. So those are the 3 top comments. So I want to just put that out there.
Yeah, man, I kind of feel bad now because
it was ridiculous because they took the most sensational claim that she made, which was Eminem is her father.
Yeah.
And they plastered that.
It totally distracted me from the point. I actually was so like more involved with the Eminem story than the...
Yeah, it's like the daytime television fucking trash. They're gonna take the most outlandish claim that somebody makes and plaster it front and center and ignore like the actual important part of what their claims are.
Otherwise, I would look at her and her story from the different like perspectives.
Yeah, you see, claims Eminem is her father.
It makes you feel like she's ridiculous, right? Instead of being...
Yeah, so instantly the viewer is not going to take her seriously.
Yes.
Dr. Phil's face said it all. He didn't give a shit.
Yeah, poor girl.
Whatever's going on with her, poor girl. So let's read out some typical examples of alleged encounters with these so-called shadow people. So the following story I found on Reddit from user PineWolf14. Quote, "Usually shadow people aren't harmful to me. They're a common occurrence in my daily life. Usually I can hear them breathing and hovering over me while I sleep, while a voice in my head says, quote, 'Don't roll over, don't roll over. Don't move, don't look up,' end quote. Granted, I can still move, but I'm frozen with fear and I refuse to move. So on one night, a voice in my head said, quote, 'This is complete and utter bullshit. You're probably just anxious and paranoid. Roll over,' end quote. So me being me, I huffed as a whatever to the voice in my head, and I rolled over, only to be face to face with a shadow person. If they were any closer, our foreheads would be touching. I opened my mouth to scream, and suddenly there were hands on my throat and I was being choked. As I started to thrash, I hit the shadow person and they dispersed like sand into nothing. I was catching my breath, and my dog who sleeps with me had woken up and come over to comfort me, worrying. Most shadow people I encounter are harmless, as far as I know." End quote. What do you make anything of that, or do you think it's the internet? Anyone can tell tall tales on the internet.
I really do hope that he made up part of the story, because if you look at the part then where he was choked, I mean it's the some severe stuff already. I mean, if you compare it with the first story of the girl, the Eminem girl.
See,
it's like it's different. If he was like choking himself because of the shadow people,
you think he wouldn't realize that he's choking himself, or do you think that he imagined it? Do you think it was a bad dream?
It would make it really like, or it would make it super serious already. I mean, if he's in that condition.
I do want to say though that this is not the first story that I've come across on the internet where a shadow person did something like this to somebody. Allegedly. I should say allegedly. So why don't you go over the next story that we have?
On October 28, 2016, paranormal researcher Michelle LeBaron and a group of her colleagues went to the old Washoe Club, which is a historical saloon located in Virginia City, Nevada, to investigate reports of shadowy-like entity. When her and her colleagues entered a particular room, a large shadow appeared between them. She described this shadow as tall, about 6'5" or 6'6", and very, very dark, with no detail within the shadow. At one point, she thought it had completely engulfed her colleague, and they had both ended up running out of the room screaming. A few minutes later, after calming down, they walked back over to the hall, and they once again saw this tall shadow figure standing there. According to LeBaron, it began pulsating some type of energy from it, like a whoop 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 type of sensation, which she could both hear and feel.
So, do you have any thoughts about this experience that Miss or Mrs. LeBaron had?
Again, the stories are getting more and more intense, man.
All right, well, you haven't heard anything yet because this next story is even crazier. So in 2018, an Argentinian security guard took footage of an alleged shadow person inside of a football team's locker room while investigating repeated loud banging noises coming from within it. In the footage, Mr. Raul Arguello can be heard talking to the camera, saying that it's the third time he's hearing this noise and he doesn't know what's going on, but he's going to start filming it so that people will believe him. In the video, loud repeated banging noises can be heard in the background, becoming louder and louder as he walks down the staircase and approaches the locker room where the sound is coming from. Upon reaching the source of the noise, the door can be seen slamming shut over and over, creating the loud banging noise. Being a man with gigantic steel huevos, Mr. Arguello flings the door open and does a panoramic look around the room, revealing that nobody is there. Seconds later, a dark, shadowy silhouette can be seen floating across the screen from left to right before disappearing into the wall. Mr. Arguello states that he did not see the shadowy figure at the time, but only saw it afterward in the video after he had reviewed it. So I think it's important to play the audio here. Even though we don't speak Spanish, I can still hear the adrenaline and the fright in his voice, and the banging sound is some of the scariest shit that I've ever heard in my life, man. Let's roll clip number 2.
Bueno, ya son como las 11 de la noche y la tercera vez que estoy escuchando este ruido de mierda. No sé qué está pasando, pero lo quiero grabar ahora para que después me crea la gente, porque esto nunca me pasó y nada, lo quería grabar, qué sé yo, estoy podrido, la concha de la lora. Digo, en linterna, no sé para qué quiero darle. Dios. Puta que te parió. La puta que te parió. Concha de la lora. La concha de la lora. Pero ¿cómo mierda puede ser que no haya nada hoy? Ya es la tercera vez.
And we're back. And no, dear listener, that banging sound that you're hearing on that clip is not the sound of Mr. Arguello's gigantic metal balls being dragged down the staircase. What you're hearing is the sound of a door slamming shut over and over, all on its own. So what did you think of that? What were your first impressions?
The first thing I had in my hand, maybe it was just because of the wind.
But there's no windows. He took a panoramic view of that locker room. There's no windows in there.
No windows in there. Maybe ventilation or something.
No, dude. No, I'm sorry that I don't buy that.
Because we didn't see the ceiling, right?
Yeah, but did you see the door? It was like slamming shut kind of from the bottom. Did you see how it was like kind of folding in on a certain part of the door?
Yeah.
Like it was being pushed in on like a very specific spot on the door because it was kind of a flimsy looking door, but it looked like it was being pressed from a part like down below the door. Because if you saw, it was closing more completely on the bottom of the door rather than the top. And it was just slamming shut like brr, 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 brr.
Interesting.
Did you notice that or no?
I did, but I still think like
I don't think that, and it looks way too deliberate to be just the wind.
because wind did it to my kitchen door a couple of times.
Well,
But
it
I mean,
happens to everybody. Not like that way, not open, shut, open, shut, open, shut, open, shut. Like this very deliberate thing. It sounded like it was just,
Maybe because the material is really light. Because like if you took the normal kitchen door, you know, it's kind of thick and shit. It's like kind of a little bit heavy, so the
Yeah.
wind wouldn't like bang it like ding 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 ding. But that one looked like maybe it was like really thin material.
yeah, I see what you're saying, man, but I don't think so. I have to disagree with you
What do
here.
you think it was? What's your opinion?
I don't know what it was, dude, but if I was in his shoes, I would have been freaked the fuck out. That would have scared the shit out of me if I had to deal with that.
And he was alone.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
alone.
shit.
And
No
in the
shit.
video he states like I'm hearing this for the third time and I'm going to start taking a video so that people believe me when I show them.
And he
I
also
tell them
said something
about
like "merda merda," which is for shit.
it. But you speak more Spanish than I do and I'm from fucking Southern California, so
Oh, I wanted to say something, but
yeah, but I wanted to say I don't speak Spanish, but I could tell that he was freaked out.
for
Like
sure
from his voice,
for
he was
sure.
fucking freaked out.
Yeah, the emotions.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the shadow though?
Well, okay, so for my opinions on the shadow, I want to come back to that later, but
Okay.
for reasons you already know, for reasons you already know, I want to know what you think first
Okay.
of the shadow.
What do I think about that shadow is that
Talking to the microphone, dude.
yeah. Microphone. What do I think about the shadow is that the lighting in that building is kind of weird. It's like from all the spots. It's like there are many light sources in that room, and it's a big room too. So it might have been his own shadow.
Really, just moving from off camera to the left, across the camera, all the way off camera to the right, his own shadow doing that? Like, I find that really hard to believe.
Me too.
And you don't
but I
have
want to believe that. Maybe.
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. So you don't
Well-
have to give me like your answer yet. But
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying that the first thing that came to my mind was like it's something with the
yeah,
light
which is
there.
like a logical thought to have is like, what could this
yeah,
be?
but I understand why you think it's weird because you know it's
It is weird, and I'll get into why I think it's weird. So
okay. Let's continue.
I wanted to ask this. It might be a rhetorical question, but have you ever had an encounter with a shadow person before? Or have you ever seen anything like that?
I wonder if you've seen that movie. I forgot the name of the movie, but I was 5 years old or maybe 7, and I was watching TV alone at home at night. It was like 1 a.m. or stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the movie was on. I don't remember the exact name of the movie, but it was about Louvre and some mummies and the evil spirits of Egypt. Like
Is it The Mummy with Brendan Fraser?
not the mummy, the other one, because it was in Louvre. Something with the mummies, I think, or evil spirits of Egypt. Like the main.
How old of a movie was it?
It's
And is this
2000.
important? Is this important to the story?
It is in a way because the guy he looked like a shadowy figure in a way.
Okay.
He had a black mask and he had a black robe, so you can say he's like shadow.
I bet some of our listeners are like, "It's this fucking movie! God damn it!" I don't know which. I haven't seen many.
So
movies,
anyway, let me continue. And then I went to sleep, and it was dark in my room. The only light was like from the road nearby, but it's kind of dark.
yeah.
And then I couldn't sleep. I was like so anxious because the movie freaking scared the shit out of me, you know? And I was alone in the flat.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, man, how am I gonna sleep? And then I looked into the corner, and I'm telling you, I saw the freaking pharaoh or whatever the hell that guy was in the corner. I didn't see the mask exactly, but I saw the figure. I saw the... Yeah, it scared shit out of me. So I decided not to look there. I just kind of turned away from it and tried to sleep. I talked myself to sleep like, man, it's not there. He's not there. Ah! But then I managed, after 1 hour, I think I managed to fall asleep. So that's my story.
Okay, I don't know if we can really count that as a real experience, because like when you're like 5 to 7 years old, you don't know what the fuck is going on in the world. I think people when you're that age, you're just gonna have such a vivid imagination. You can't trust anything that you remember from that age, at least in my opinion. So I wanted to say that I've actually had my own experience with a so-called shadow person, and it's one of the reasons why I've become open to the idea of other strange shit out there being a real possibility. And before I tell this story, I want to preface that this happened in October of 2011, and there's a reason why I remember the exact month that this occurred, and I'll get into that a bit later. I've told my story a couple times on the internet already in a few dark corners of it, but I'm going to tell it on this podcast again because it's my podcast, and I want to tell it on the Shadow People episode. So I was in my early 20s, and I was working at a Sears Essentials, and this was in San Diego, California. And for those of you who don't know what a Sears is, it's a department store where they sell tools, appliances, electronics, all the way down to kitchenware, furniture, clothes, and more. However, a Sears Essentials was an even shittier version of a Sears. It was like a Kmart Sears hybrid, where the worst of both worlds were kind of combined into one shitty store. And I was working there, and I was just marinating in the rubble of my own broken dreams at the time. Don't worry, I've made a much better life for myself now. The one thing that I actually liked about working there was all my coworkers. I loved all of my coworkers, and I can't think of a single person that I worked with there that I despised. So that was the positive. At the time, I worked in the electronics department, and I was selling TVs, cameras, miscellaneous electronics shit. And it's important to note that my department was located in the front right corner of the store. So if you walked in through the front door, you just hang a right and you'd walk all the way down to the end. That's where my department was. And then on the other side of that corner was the toy department. And it had about 4 or 5 aisles of toys in it. So in order to get into the electronics stock room, you had to actually walk through the closest aisle of toys, and the stock room would have been in the far right corner. I hope that makes sense the way I'm describing this. So one night in October of 2011, I was doing the closing shift that day. So I was working either 1 to 9 o'clock or 5 to 9 o'clock. I can't remember which it was for me that night, but the store would close at 9 o'clock, and half of the overhead lights would turn off. So it was a little bit darker, but it was still easy to see. It was just like a typical closed retail store kind of look. So once all the customers were out of the building on a typical night, we would be signaled over the PA system that we're all clear to start counting our registers. And, we would count our registers. We would put all the extra money from the registers into a bag, like a money drop bag, and we bring it up to the front of the store. And once that was all finished, we would be let out of the store to go home. So during this particular night, I was waiting for the all clear to be announced just after 9 o'clock. It was probably 9:02 or 9:04 p.m. I had nothing to do at this particular moment, so I started facing all the cameras on the camera display, and I was fixing them up just to look a little bit neater and facing kind of out towards the main aisle to make them look better. And then off to my left, about 20 or 30 feet away, I saw something in my peripheral vision. It was super dark. It was tall and vaguely human shaped. And it was moving down the main aisle from the direction of the back office. And in that moment, I thought nothing of it. I assumed it was just one of my managers walking from the back office towards the front of the store, which is like kind of a normal routine at about that time. So once the figure got to the middle of the intersection where that last toy aisle, like the toy aisle that leads to the electronic stockroom, met the main aisle, it made like this perfect 90-degree turn and started like floating down the toy aisle. And I say floating because the motion looked fucking fake, dude. It looked fake. It looked weird. It looked like I can't even really describe it. Like a human who would turn and walk down this aisle would make more of a rounded turn. But this figure didn't. It was going straight and then suddenly changed direction without a change in speed.
Sorry, maybe I missed the point, but were you looking at the figure directly at this time, or still
No, it was
peripheral?
still in my peripheral
Still
vision
peripheral.
because
Okay,
this was all secondary kind of thing. I was still facing all the cameras, and I saw something coming down the aisle. I assumed that it was one of my managers, maybe. I don't know what I thought because this thing happened so fast. I didn't really have time to think about it until after the fact. So, like I said, Ghost was the furthest thing from my mind at this point. All right, so a human would have made more of a rounded turn as it wanted to walk towards, like, change and then walk down a different aisle. But it was like, I swear to God, it was like a perfect fucking 90-degree turn where the speed remained constant and it just like Pac-Man, dude. Have you ever played Pac-Man?
Yeah.
How Pac-Man turns? It's just like this perfect 90-degree turn. That's the kind of turn I'm talking about, where it doesn't look natural. So anyway, bear in mind, I'm still not paying full attention to the figure at this point because I'm still kind of staring off and it's still in my peripheral vision. I wasn't focused on it the entire time because I thought it was just another employee or manager maybe. So yeah, like as I said, the whole thing lasted maybe 5 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. So I didn't really have time in my brain to register what it was that I was seeing until after the incident happened. So now what makes me remember this incident and what makes it stick out in my mind, and the reason why I know that I didn't just hallucinate this, is that this particular toy aisle had this toy baby doll sitting on the shelf, and it was motion activated. So if you walked in front of this doll, it would go off and start waving its arms and legs and either crying or giggling. And as soon as this figure walked in front of that baby doll toy went off, it started giggling, and I immediately turned my head like this to see who was there. Fucking nobody there.
So there is no way it was one of your coworkers or something?
No, because I had a perfect view of the aisle from end to end. So keep in mind, I'm seeing this out of my peripheral vision. I'm seeing this dark figure kind of come like this, and then I see it kind of go like that. And then it starts walking down the toy aisle. And when it gets to where that spot was, where that baby doll toy was, the baby doll toy goes off. I immediately turn to look. Fucking nobody there. Nobody.
See.
And so that's why I didn't pass this off as just like a hallucination, because if that baby doll toy did not go off, I would have just played it off as like, oh yeah, like my mind's playing tricks on me or some shit like that. But I swear, I immediately turned to look to see who was there. Nobody. So the next thing I want to talk about So while doing research for this episode and seeing the footage that Argentinian security guard took, it caught me off guard because that type of smooth, fluid motion is kind of exactly what I had seen. And it wasn't even the shape or the dark black color of the figure that was like the weirdest part to me. Like the weirdest part to me was how it moved. Like it looked fucking fake. I don't know how else to really describe it, but it looked fucking fake. Like if you compare, like, all right, so if you look at like a 60 hertz television and you compare a 60 hertz television to a 120 hertz television and you compare the motion between the two, you imagine the 60 hertz being the one that we live in and then the 120 hertz that this thing lives in. Just unusually smooth and flowing. Like it just looked like it didn't belong in our world. It just looked way too smooth and it looked fucking fake. And that's what caught me off guard. It wasn't necessarily the fact that it was this tall black thing that just vanished. It was the motion that, I mean, everything from that perfect 90-degree turn to how smooth it just glided over the tile floor. Just fucking weird. So I want to go on record as saying that I believe that video that Mr. Arguello took, it's consistent with what I saw when I was working at Sears. So, yeah.
Sorry. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Of course, yeah.
Is there any chance that you were like sleep deprived that night?
I can't recall my exact state of mind that night, but what I can say is that it was just normal. Like I don't think I was sleep deprived. I wasn't high on drugs or drunk or anything like that. It was just a normal day for me. Like nothing out of the ordinary happened that day. I wasn't super tired. I wasn't
Were like stressed or something?
No, like no more than I normally would have been.
So just normal
Yeah,
state?
like the thing that I remember the most about that night is it being fucking normal. Like nothing weird about it at all. So in my mind at the time, like I just seen a ghost. Like I'd never heard of a shadow person before. And also weird to me was the fact that it was like a dark black and it wasn't the image of a ghost that I had in mind at the time. Like looking back to who I was at that time, if you had asked me what a ghost looks like, I would have probably pictured Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of Return of the Jedi, or, you know, like some glowing blue or gray thing. Like I had never heard of like a black shadow being a ghost. So moving on though. So after everyone in the store finished counting their registers and everyone was gathered near the front of the store to get let out at night, I was talking to some of the other employees and I was telling them what I'd just seen. So the first people I talked to were the girls who worked as front cashiers, and they were kind of freaked out by it. Like they were kind of worried. They seemed concerned, worried, scared about my story. And then I went to talk about what I'd just seen to the guys who worked in the back receiving area, and none of them act surprised. Like one of them told me, like, yeah, we hear shit like that all the time back there when no one's there. Like, and this other guy who's next to him, he's just like, yeah, we hear footsteps up in this giant wooden loft back there all the time when no one's up there. So another guy from the back receiving area, he told me that he saw a ghost. He didn't describe what the ghost looked like, but he said he saw a ghost back there wearing Old West clothes. Those were his words, Old West clothes. So it's just like they didn't even flinch. They didn't call me out for being a bullshitter. They didn't act shocked or surprised. They were all just like, yeah, this is kind of our daily life back there. Like we experience this shit all the time. And yeah, I mean, these were just barnacle covered fucking veterans of Sears. They had worked there in that building probably 10 years at that point. So
for them, this phenomenon was completely normal in a way.
Yeah, like, yeah, and I had never heard anyone talk about this building in particular being haunted until after I had kind of talked about what I had seen with some people who were like, yeah, you know, like we've seen some shit too, or, you know, experienced shit. So looking back, there is another kind of weird incident that I remember. So I had driven my car into the automotive department, which was on like the other side of the store. And I wanted to get I can't remember if I wanted to get my tires rotated or my oil changed in my car. But I remember I was in the main garage area of the building, and I was talking to the other employee. He had a clipboard in his arm and he's writing down information in my car. He's talking to me. And out of nowhere, there's a hose to a compressor on a wall. It somehow became unclipped, and it just fell, you know, like a compressor to fill the tires with air, the hose. And it just came unclipped from the wall, and it just kind of fell over because it's stiff. It's not like a soft hose. It's stiff because it's full of air. And it just kind of like fell over like a, you know, like this. And then the metal hose part, like the metal part on the end of the hose, just clocked him right in the side of the head. And he's just like, oh shit. And to me at the time, like I didn't really connect this with anything paranormal. Like I thought it was kind of fucking funny, but I didn't want to laugh at him. But looking back on it, it's just like maybe some crazy shit happened to where this ghost just wanted to clock him in the head with a fucking hose. But yeah, that's the other.
I hope it's just bad luck, man. I really hope so. Otherwise, that guy is in trouble.
Yeah. So, all right, this is where the story gets weird, like as if it wasn't already weird. So I've got to mention some shit that happened after the fact, like after all of this happened. And I've got to advise you and our listeners to kind of put an asterisk next to this, because I'm not sure if this is due to any, you know, shadow people or ghostly phenomenon, but I want to include it because it's still really fucking weird and it could be related. So at the time I was living with my uncle, and I was kind of commuting to and from work from his house. I was living in his house and I was working at Sears at this time. And one night in November 2011, it was right about the same time. I remember I had just finished counting my registers, and I was waiting for them to let us out to leave the store after our shift. And my cousin called me. He's like, you know, he sounded kind of distraught. And I was like, hey, like what's going on? He's just like, yeah, my dad died. And I was like, holy fuck. So this happened in November of 2011, which was less than a month from when I saw that shadow person. And what had happened was he had gone in for some seemingly minor surgery, but he had died kind of on the operating table. I don't know the full story, but he died on the operating table either through like mysterious causes or like a medical malpractice or something, but it was for something super routine. It wasn't like a serious surgery, but he just happened to pass away during the operation. And anyway, to make a long story short, my cousin and my aunt, his mom, moved in after he had passed away, and we lived there for a few years. And some weird shit started happening around the house. Like in my room, this would happen a few times a day usually, where I would hear this really loud banging noise underneath my floorboards. I had a wooden floor, and it would sound, and I would actually feel it, like somebody just punching the floorboard, like from underneath the floor.
Cousin?
Yeah, but it was just like a one fucking bang like that would come out of nowhere and scare the shit out of me. But beyond that, like nothing else would happen.
Could it have been your cousin or something?
No, there's no way, because there's no way to get under the floor.
I see.
But yeah, I'd hear this banging noise coming from under my floor. Like I would feel it, and it would scare the shit out of me, like once, twice, maybe 3 times a day. And that would happen. My auntie she told me this story of she was standing in the kitchen. She was at the sink, I believe, and she felt somebody grab the side of her waist, and she turned to look, and there was nobody there. So that was one incident. And then the last incident that I can recall is we had a cat at the house. He was a really big, fat, gray tabby. He's still alive, I believe. And I was holding him in the kitchen over my right shoulder like this. And from the kitchen, you can see into my room if my door is open. And he was staring intently at something in my room. His eyes and his head were just locked on to the inside of my room. And I noticed this. So I was kind of like turning my torso around to make sure he wasn't just staring at something else, but he remained locked onto something in my room. And I was like, okay, like I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna move closer to my room. And I had gotten to a certain point where I got closer and closer to my room, and at a certain point I got too close. He freaked out and clawed the shit out of my chest and my shoulder to get down and run away. So yeah, like looking into my room, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything at the time, but apparently my cat did. And it still makes me wonder what it was that he might have seen, because, you know, cats can see shit that we can't as humans.
I mean, that would be like really weird, and maybe the question would be a little bit off topic, but how was your cat usually to you? Was he like friendly cat, like normal cat, nothing
He loved
special?
everybody, dude. He loved everybody.
Because I remember a cat back at my grandma's place. He once jumped onto my cousin's head and he started to scratch it like crazy.
No, he scratched the shit out of me, like trying to jump out of my arms. Is what I mean.
So, but usually he was friendly, right? Nothing,
yeah.
Nothing special.
No, not vicious at all. He just wanted to desperately get down before I brought him into my room. So that was the impression. So yeah, man, that's my shadow person story / paranormal story. I haven't seen anything like that since before or since around the 2011 2012 year. I mean, dude, I would have much rather seen something cooler like a Bigfoot or a UFO. Like those, I wish I saw Bigfoot or a UFO instead, but instead I saw I know I saw a shadow person. I know they're real. To me, I know they're real. So
actually, your story made me remember. You might call it like encounter with a shadow person of sorts, because it's in a way similar. But there is one condition. I was really sleep deprived.
mm-hmm.
It was in Finland in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, in 2014. And winters they're just brutal, man. There is first it's cold. Second, usually there is not much in terms of sunlight, you know. Sometimes
for sure.
Because my like circadian rhythm got messed up, I would wake up and it's already freaking dark. So I got kind of a bit depressed, and again I slept less and less. And one day I also had a lot of assignments in university there, so I didn't sleep for a couple of days, or maybe I slept 2 hours per day and stuff like that. So you put it all together, and then one day, one of those days, I was just washing my hands in the sink, just minding my own business, and then again, the important point, in my peripheral vision, I saw some guy freaking running. And it was smooth too, really smooth. I couldn't hear the footsteps or anything, but it was really smooth. He was just running through the hallway, and I got scared, man. I was like, "Who the hell is in our room?" Because I got a few neighbors, so we had a common hallway. But he was kind of blonde guy, maybe like a stereotypical Finnish guy. I didn't see him.
He wasn't a shadow, was he?
He wasn't a shadow, but.
He He was like a fully manifested human kind of looking.
I didn't
guy.
see like all the details,
Right.
but the difference was that I maybe because I didn't see him in the dark, it was like illuminate, like it was the light was on. So I got really scared, and I went like at first I was like maybe I should just close the door and stay in the freaking bathroom and don't get out till my neighbors go back, so I won't fight this freak alone, you know. But then I thought, okay. You gotta be brave, be brave. So I left the bathroom and I started looking for him. Like, where's this fucking guy? Where is this fucking guy? I think I even took the broom with me, you know, to just poke him in his freaking face. And then I found no one. The other day, I was still in this weird condition, like sleep deprived. I went shopping, and I saw a dog I saw the dog running at me, and I got scared. Like, hey, what the hell? Usually there are no stray dogs in Finland because they kind of keep it in control. And I saw it running at me like viciously with the evilish intent, I would say. And it was in my peripheral vision too.
Right.
And then I looked at it directly. And these were just freaking leaves flying through it, man. So the hypothesis, the scientific hypothesis about being sleep deprived and we seeing weird stuff, I can relate to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this can explain some.
But your story is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I totally I'm in agreement with this kind of being both a supernatural phenomenon and also a scientific one where this kind of shit can happen to people, whether they're sleep deprived, they're on drugs, they have some sort of mental disorder. I definitely do. But when it comes to my situation, I don't see it as that because I've never seen something like this before or since then. And just seeing the fact that there was like a baby doll toy that's motion activated. Like it's something that we were all familiar with working there because to get to the electronic stockroom, like if I had sold a TV and I had to go take the TV out from the stockroom, I had to go past there. Every time you'd walk past it, this fucking baby doll toy would go off. And it was just like a normal part of living in the Sears. Because like this Sears, there was like almost no customers there, dude. It was like tumbleweeds blowing around and shit. Like I'm surprised that this Sears survived as long as it did. But this baby doll toy, it had sat there for ages. And
So it's like, sorry for interruption.
Yeah.
So it's like the speakers here in China, right? Then you enter the store and they go off like, welcome to.
Oh yeah, sort of like that. But
they never fail. They also never.
Yeah,
fail.
but it's a baby doll toy. Like I don't know what technology they would use, whether that's like infrared or do you know what a toy would use? Whatever that toy uses detected this shadow person is what I'm saying. Whether that's infrared or I don't know what you would call it.
Usually
guess-
it's in
I guess I
but
should've-
for the door I don't know.
Not for the door. I mean for the toy.
No, yeah,
Like-
for the toy I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I should.
There are some other ways to detect motion, but
Yeah.
the easiest one is infrared. I think.
Yeah, I think one of our listeners should email us and let us know what
In the
those
comments,
toys usually.
or in the comments, yeah.
Yeah, email us at supermysterybrospodcast@gmail.com and let us know what technology those baby doll toys usually use for motion detection. But anyway, man, I digress. Let's talk about some of the supernatural explanations for the shadow people phenomenon. So, number one, astral bodies. This theory puts forth the idea that people who are having an out-of-body experience can be observed by others as shadow people. According to yogapedia.com, the astral body is a hypothesized spiritual counterpart to the physical human body that is said to exist on a different plane. In other words, some hypothesize that shadow people are the spirits of normal, everyday people who are just having an out-of-body experience.
Second, interdimensional beings. Some have asserted that shadow people may be some type of entity that live not just in three-dimensional world that we live in, but also have access to other dimensions that allow them to bleed in and out of our perceived world, back and forth between higher dimensions. In order to better illustrate this point in the context of what our average pea brains can comprehend, picture yourself staring down at a line of marching ants. For the purpose of this thought experiment, assume that ants live in two-dimensional world. They can move forward, back, left, and right, but cannot move up or down in space. Nor can they see or perceive what's up or down. Now imagine that you take your finger and squish one of them between, quickly retreating your finger back up toward the sky. Its ant bodies will have no sense of what killed their friend. You're able to perceive and utilize the third dimension to maneuver while the ants cannot. Much like the way these hypothetical ants live in two dimensions, this theory postulates that shadow people may be able to utilize other dimensions to appear from or disappear into a whim. On a whim.
All right. The third theory here is aliens. Some people think that shadow people might be aliens. People who claim to have been abducted by aliens have sometimes reported the aliens to have supernatural powers, including the ability to walk through doors, walls, closed windows, and the ability to appear or disappear in a flash. Those who believe shadow people to be extraterrestrial entities explain away the shadow people phenomenon with theories of exotic technology that humans have no reference for. World-renowned ancient alien theorist, pillar of the scientific community, and guy who allegedly uses alien jizz as hair gel, Giorgio Tsoukalos, had this to say about the idea. Quote, "Could it be that we're not talking about shadow people, but some type of a technology that appeared like a shadow? And it may be, sometimes a technology did not work. It would reveal that person underneath the cloak or underneath the device, and so they would be seen for maybe a fraction of a second," end quote. What a genius.
Fourth, demons or malevolent spirits. The definition of a demon, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is an evil spirit or devil, especially thought to possess a person or act as a tormentor in hell. Reports of shadow person sightings are often accompanied by feelings of dread and malevolence, which is no surprise if you consider witnessing something dark and scary looking that isn't supposed to exist. As stated previously, in most folklore around the world, these shadow people are typically regarded as evil in intent, or at very least indifferent to human suffering. From possessing people to eating their souls and inflicting harm upon humans, few have ever claimed a shadow person encounter being anything less than unsettling.
All right, man. So let's give our listeners some science food for thought.
Central vision is described as being located in a 5-degree angle from the center of our gaze, with 8 degrees being our paracentral vision and 18 degrees being our macular vision or macular. Between 18 and 30 degrees, our vision is near peripheral. Between 30 and 60 degrees is our mid peripheral, and beyond 60 degrees is described as our far peripheral.
So the following comes from an article written on oxsiteglobal.com entitled Central Vision versus Peripheral Vision. I think it's very important to address it because, as we mentioned in the beginning of the episode, the vast majority of shadow people sightings occur in the peripheral vision, not in central vision. So here's the start of the article. Eyesight can be seen, pun very much intended, as being comprised of two main functions, central and peripheral. Most associate central vision with focusing on particular objects of interest, while peripheral vision is something to the side that attracts attention. Both act as a function of the human retina, which is made up of two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. Rods are responsible for vision at low light levels, while cones are active at higher light levels. However, Both central and peripheral do much more and provide use that many may not be aware of. Central vision. Central vision is probably the one that is most straightforward. Perhaps regarded as more important of the two, central vision is responsible for most of the active functions that someone uses. Reading, driving, recognizing colors and shapes, and general focus-based, detail-oriented sight tasks are fulfilled by the use of central vision. This all comes from the very center of the retina at the back of the eye, also known as the macular, is where there is a high concentration of cones. If this area is damaged, it can cause vision to become blurry and dull. Eventually, it may lead to dark patches appearing. So about the peripheral vision. The general public are often aware of the importance of peripheral vision. It's not something that people actively use, but this doesn't mean that it's less important than central vision. Peripheral vision helps to process spatial information received through the eyes and is an important cog in our innate fight or flight response system. Any activity that involves space, and many ones that don't, can be improved with better peripheral vision. This is due to spatial information combining with body mechanics to provide correct and precise movements. For example, if someone is dribbling a football towards a goal, their peripheral vision can inform them of an impending opponent coming from the side. Good peripheral vision gives the player the opportunity to avoid the challenge posed. Bad peripheral vision may leave the player dining on dirt. So this next part, I think, is going to be the most important part of the article. Light sensitivity is also associated with peripheral vision. People will often see better in low light situations with their peripheral vision rather than looking straight with their central vision. This is largely due to the increase in rod density in the periphery, which are more sensitive to light. In addition, peripheral vision plays an important part in scene gist recognition, allowing the individual to access related long-term memory with just a single eye fixation. This then helps to guide the individual in their subsequent actions. So I think the important thing to take away here is that peripheral vision is not just a shittier version of your central vision. Your peripheral vision serves kind of like a separate purpose from your central vision. So it's kind of the reason why when you go into you get up to take a leak in the middle of the night, all your lights are off, and in order to not stumble around the room in the dark, you kind of look where you're going using your peripheral vision. Do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's because your peripheral vision is actually more sensitive to light. You can see better at night through your peripheral than you can through your central vision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that could be one reason why we see shadow people more so in our peripheral vision than in our central vision.
Yeah, I also was thinking like during when you were telling your story, I also came up with the idea that maybe it's so, and as you said in the article, according to the article, it's more sensitive to movement. Mm-hmm. Might it be that it's also like higher FPS, you know? Like it's so the movement that might appear more smooth, so you kind of detect it better.
No, I don't think so. And one of the reasons why I say I don't think so is if you look at that video that the security guard took, you can still see how fucking weird it looks. And that's the motion of that shadow on his video is just so weird. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, how it looks like a higher FPS than the world around it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not that it's just like I would say it's more of like optical illusion maybe.
Yeah.
Where it just because it's so smooth and weird and unnatural looking. The only frame of reference that I have is like a higher frames per second. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But no, we don't see it at a higher FPS in our peripheral that I'm aware of.
But I mean, if it's a complete rant because I don't know anything about the reason, you know.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say here, if it's more important part in the scene recognition and stuff, and it's related, and it helped us to survive in a way,
mm-hmm.
I think it might be logical for it to be more
FPS.
FPS.
You-
You know, like if
Well,
you play
dude,
the
no,
shooter with the low FPS,
didn't-
you're like,
It's been a while since I looked this up, but there is an actual FPS number on what our eyes see.
really?
Yeah, there is, but it's like in the tens of thousands if I recall. I didn't look it up when I did this episode. It's something I heard maybe 10, 15 years ago.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about.
But it's
that.
yeah, it's just our eyes are not able to really perceive like FPS drops just like you know what I mean? Like we already see it such a high FPS in our day-to-day world that slight differences here and there are not going to make a huge difference. It's just when I say FPS, I'm just talking about the motion that it was so unnatural and weird and just unusually smooth that I just say that it looked like it was in a higher FPS. That's all I mean by that.
Yeah, I understand, but still, I would leave it as a question for the audience or something. If someone is more like interested in vision or something, or they know better, maybe there is a thing like that. But I have no idea. It just made me think about it. If it's more related to like fight or flight detection or whatever, it might be more sensitive to the.
You might be right, man.
It's just a wild guess, you know. I'm just
yeah.
just wanna leave it here.
We're both firing from the hip here.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
I'm not a doctor like you are, man. But anyway, man. So I have I have several questions at the end of our episode that I want to discuss with you. So why do you think that we're able to, or I say we as in people, human beings, able to see them at all, and why only in our peripheral usually? Do you have any thoughts about that? Or do you think, I guess I should ask you first, what do you think this phenomenon can be boiled down to? And if you think that I just hallucinated, if you think that there's nothing more to this phenomenon than a psychological disorder of, you know, no matter how big or small, you can tell me. I'm not going to get offended. Like, I just want to know what your thoughts are. If you disagree with me, that's fine, man. Like, that's good radio.
If you're gonna just talk about your story in particular,
Just the
experience.
phenomenon in general. You can be including my story
but
or
if
not.
if we will boil down to one thing, it might be easier to make some conclusions. So first of all, I have like two things to say here. First, if it wasn't real and if it was an illusion of some sorts, or it was your interpretation of whatever was going on here
Yeah.
at the moment, and like if you go back to the article that you just read, that the peripheral vision also allow an individual to access long-term memory.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been whatever, like collective unconscious or whatever thing that just stores in your deep memory. It might have used that explanation because you were also stressed in a way. You know what I mean? I kind of. Okay, that's one option, and then you can use it as an explanation in a way. But what if it's not? What if it was for real? If it really did happen, and the doll got activated by that, it. Either I have no freaking idea what has happened, or another option, we can talk about it from the perspective of the synchronicity. The old, not old, but the classic psychoanalyst Carl Jung, he came up with the phenomenon of synchronicity. So to put it in easy terms, for example, if you think about your mom and she calls you out of nowhere, but you just thought about her, and then she calls you, and it's hard to explain. The odds are just don't add up, you know. It's just kind of weird, and you're like, oh.
I get that same feeling sometimes too when I think of something and then I see it or something happens and I'm like, whoa, I just thought of that. But-
or you think I think it's like a classic example. You're thinking about red car, and then you open
Yeah.
the door and shit, the red car. Yeah, I heard this on YouTube somewhere about the red car. And that would be like a freaking wild example of that synchronicity. Because just imagine you saw it in your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
You describe it, or either you really saw it, or you felt like it was a shadow person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the freaking doll set off. That would be like top level example of synchronicity. You know, if it was just in your head and it
Right.
was just your foot, that would be freaking wild, man. Too.
So I guess before you get any deeper, I would want to ask you, so including my experience, what would you make of my coworkers' experiences too, on top of my own? Because I had no idea that other people in the store were having similar experiences at the time. Like nobody told me that this place was allegedly haunted. And also another thing I wanted to reiterate here was at the time I had no idea that shadow people were a thing. Like my idea of a ghost and what a ghost should look like was very different than what I saw. Like what I saw was this black shadow fucking thing, and I think when I was telling the story, my idea of a ghost was like Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of fucking Return of the Jedi. Like that was my idea of what a ghost is supposed to look like. So like what do you make of that then? If it's all about synchronicity.
Like if you go back to the same guy again, I'll answer the second question because it's easier for me somehow about your. How could it possibly be that you've seen something which you haven't seen before, haven't thought about it before, like you had no idea how the shadow people supposed to look? If you go back to the folklore and all the myths, and like we said, the figures, they existed. So there is a possibility, again, going back to Jung somehow, he believed in, or he coined the term for collective unconscious, that somehow like all the mythological things and all like the scary figures, the good figures, they're stored in your head. And for example, if you sometimes you just feel weird, then you go to the church or something, you feel that there is something in it, there is something deep here. So but maybe you never seen the icons before, you never seen them, you just look at it and feel something, but you're not supposed to, because it might have been that you never seen it before, but you feel something. So from that point of view, that maybe that the ghost is somehow stored in your collective unconscious in a way.
There is something to be said about that, because this might be a little bit off topic, but I met a person here. I'm not gonna name them or anything like that, but they told me that they became a Christian because they got hired to do some photography in a church, and the moment they stepped in this church, they instantly knew that they had to convert to Christianity. And that's not to say I'm not Christian. I just want to preface that I'm actually agnostic. I'm not an atheist. I'm not a Christian. I'm more Socratic in my belief system. I know that I know nothing, and that's been my philosophy my entire adult life. Is I know that I know nothing, and I truly believe that's like true wisdom. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
But the first question about going back to the first question about the coworkers, and that they also reported those facts. That's where it gets
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, and it might be a weird argument, but maybe is it possible that the guys who work there are more prone to some like insomnia and whatever shit? Like, or they are
tweakers.
I mean,
I don't know. Maybe, but it's possible. But I can't confirm that or anything. it's the damnedest fucking thing, dude. It's the damnedest thing.
You mean working?
No, I just mean this whole thing is just it's the damnedest thing, and it's been my biggest personal mystery, and
Mhm.
that's why it's episode 2 of our podcast here. So, yeah, it's just a fucking weird one, dude.
It's really hard to find an explanation for that.
Yeah, because I do agree that in certain instances, sleep deprivation, drug use, mental disorders, I think they're all solid explanations, but I don't think they're solid explanations for every incident. Because, I mean, at the time, dude, you know me, I don't do drugs. I drink beer. That's like my drug of choice. I wasn't on beer at the time. I wasn't necessarily sleep deprived either. It was just like a normal. I remember it being a super fucking normal, bland day where nothing special happened. I was just in the right place at the right time. I saw this thing move down the aisle out of my peripheral. It set off that baby doll toy. I looked over to my left to see who it was there. Fucking nobody. I'm looking at that baby doll toy. It's still wiggling its arms and legs and giggling. And yeah, dude, it's just the damnedest thing. And I wanted to also say, like, it didn't freak me out. It was just, I was in awe of it. Like, I felt like I got to look behind the curtain for a brief moment, if that makes sense. You know, like that Wizard of Oz reference where I got to peek behind the curtain, and it kind of confirmed things for me where it didn't confirm anything with any certainty, but what it did confirm with me is that there's shit in this world that's beyond the explanation of normal human mind. I don't know how else to say it, but I don't know what the explanation is, but there's shit that doesn't make sense. And until it happens to you, I should say, when it does happen to you, it's going to make the world is going to make even less sense than it did before. Yeah. That's all I got to say about that, man.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild.
Well, do you have any
I mean, like I said before, even if it was like a figure of your imagination or your mind, like going on working on auto mode or something, just interpreting some wild shadows as the shadow person, even if it's the case, then the doll it's just wild, man. Just imagine somehow in a way.
You mean lightning would have had to have struck twice?
Yeah, I'm telling you, for me, it makes it even more wild. I mean, if it was a shadow person and the doll kind of set off, it's freaking wild.
Like what if like I had just hallucinated this, and then at the exact right moment it just glitched and went off. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, see, exactly.
To me, that's like almost even less likely than a real shadow person, because that's like, what would the odds of that be?
Yeah, I'm telling you, for me, it makes it way more freaking wild, man. What are the odds that the doll would set off? It's like, it's not even 0.1%. It's just like freaking impossible. And if it was the case, I just don't know what to say, because usually, I mean, if you take, I don't have the data, but I guess if you take maybe 90 or 99.9% of the claims, which people say, oh, I encountered some wild shit, usually there are some like good scientific explanations for that, right?
Yeah.
And even if we explain your experience in that terms, like it's peripheral vision, your brain has interpreted it, it still leaves this freaking thing there.
Yeah.
The doll.
Exactly. And that's the reason why it stuck with me. So if I'd only witnessed this with my eyes and that doll did not go off, I would have forgotten about it the next day. Like, I would have just been like, oh, I just saw some shit. Like, my mind just playing tricks on me or whatever. But the fact that that doll went off right after I had seen this thing move, it was just floating down the aisle, turned 90 degrees perfectly like a Pac-Man would, and just passed in front of that doll. Doll went off. I looked. nobody there. Fucking
Wild.
weird. And you know, it sounds like a scary experience, but as I said before, it didn't freak me out really. I had just a sense of deep curiosity and awe, and I felt very privileged to have seen something like that. Like I felt really like, wow, that was the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. And it was like, yeah. But anyway, like I said before too, I would have rather have seen a UFO or Bigfoot. Like who the fuck wants to see a shadow person? But anyway, it happened to me. I don't know what else to say. Do you have anything else you want to add to this discussion, man?
Yeah, I'd say thank you for sharing the story, man. It's really it was cool experience to go with you through the process, because you never actually told me the story in all like particular details.
Yeah,
and
so
stuff.
I mean,
So-
I remember, you know, when we were out at a bar or something, I probably told you a few times already, just the broad strokes of the story.
Yeah.
But I haven't gotten into the nitty gritty parts of the story with you, and yeah, I feel good getting it kind of off my chest a little bit, and telling it in sort of a first person kind of way. And I've told this story in a couple places on the internet, but yeah, I'm putting my name and my reputation on the line here and saying that, yeah, this fucking happened to me, and if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. So,
Yeah.
do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. I think we're good to go.
All right, man. Do you have any apologies, retractions, or shout outs before we go?
Yeah, man, I got an apology to make. I want to apologize to the girl I made fun of because she claimed that her father was Eminem. It's kind of caught me off guard a little bit. So
Yeah, you're kind of a dick to her, man. So I'd like to give a shout out to all of the people I worked with at Sears, and also shout out to Sears for making this episode possible to even begin with. Sears, life well spent. Art man, do you have any final thoughts before we go? I think I already asked you that actually.
yeah, it's time to go.
All right, well, I think it's about time to get out of here then. Like sands through the hourglass, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time.
Помните, ребята, истина прячется в тени. Вместе мы найдем ее.
This is Super Mystery Bros.
The freaking cloud, the radioactive cloud. As I heard, it was going to Moscow or something, but then they diverted or they somehow changed the direction. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it's fake news, man. But
You ever see that movie, Toxic Avenger?
no.
It was this 80s movie about this guy. He fell into this barrel of toxic waste and he came out. He's just this crazy mutant looking guy who's like really super strong and shit.
Mm.